Don't think there's PE credit through for. But they're still
I
enrolled.
told my daughter that I had a
They're still
presentation today
enrolled
at
in
3
school.
o'clock and she just
That's
called
all.
me
Yeah, that's what they do.
to say good luck.
Ah,
Oh, that's
what?
so sweet.
sweet daughter.
What a sweet
I
pie.
mentioned
Why is she on her phone at school?
school's over.
not at
3
school.
o'clock.
She's not at school.
And she's not in an Osceola school, so it might not be the same for
Is it
her.
3
Keep in mind, I wrote the policy in orange with Sarah as well.
I know, that's true,
And you
but guess
left and
what?
they maybe said,
School is over at 2:50 and she is walking home with her friend and
Anything
set an
like that.
alarm to call me.
Aw,
That's so sweet.
That's very sweet.
Like, that's
How
so,
early?
yeah, 11.
No.
That, like, I just got nervous because she was calling and I was like, oh my gosh.
I know, so I was like, what's wrong?
So sweet, because I'll tell you what, by 13,
She's gonna want to kick me down the
what
road.
do you want?
Yeah. If they text you back at all.
Yeah, exactly.
it's dad, dad, dad,
If
dad.
she doesn't text me back at all,
What do you want,
she will
Dad?
really dislike living in my house. So,
Yeah, but
Let's hope.
then she does leave.
yeah, I don't, you know, she'll be gone all summer, so I'm just trying to enjoy the few weeks I have here. So,
All right, we are calling to order the legal counsel update for Tuesday, May 14th. Ms. Corrin, you have the floor.
thank you. Good afternoon, school board members, Dr. Shanoff, and all of the other employees that are in the room. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Okay, just making sure. So today I am here to provide a legal update. I just want to remind that this is about more of the legal department and what I've done. This is not about my self-evaluation. That is due tomorrow, and then that would be discussed in a public meeting in June. Would you like me to wait? So I just wanted to let you all know that I was hearing my echo, so that's why I stopped for a minute. Thank you so much. So that evaluation will be sent to you tomorrow to be discussed at a June 30th board meeting or before that. So as we go through, I want to apologize in advance because I am not good at doing all of this together simultaneously. So we're going to discuss my first 30 days, then we're going to discuss matters that I've already addressed, a legal overview of the legal department as a whole, school board policy concerns, and then what I'm looking at for the next 90 days. And within that, I'm going to have 1 or 2 questions that I'm going to pose to you all that I would like, if once the presentation's over, we can get back to so I can gather clarification on how you all want me to move forward. So in the first, and then my next 90 days. Okay, so in my first 30 days, so I started December 13th, 2023. If I consider winter break and spring break, I did work winter break reviewing policy, but it's 4 months or 5 months, depending on which way you slice it, that I've been here. In the first 30 days, I received my technology. I actually did have a big learning curve because the systems that are used here are different than in my last employment. So getting familiar with Focus and ClassLink and things like that are things that I did. I did review all of the school board policies, so I've gone through and read every single one of them at least once. It was a scintillating read. I would like you all to know that. I introduced myself at the superintendent's administrative meeting, and that was really important for me. I wanted the school district employees and cabinet members, most importantly, also to know that I'm available, I'm here, I'm willing to provide assistance, so I really wanted to start creating those relationships. And then I have met monthly with most of the school board members, so I'm very, very excited about that. Sometimes more than monthly. I also drafted my legal evaluation instrument, and that is what you are going to receive tomorrow. Part of the documentation that is going to be attached to that will be this presentation today because it does have some really great information in it about what I've done. And immediate matters that I've addressed. I believe the very first day that I was here in January when school started again, within about 15 minutes of being here, Dr. Allen was in my office with a custody issue. So we started right away running with issues in the district that I was helping to assist. But I've worked with safety and security, and with that it's really been surveillance video, bullying, harassment, and some other issues. I have dealt with some equal opportunity issues, those are EEOC issues. That will finally come to the board at the next school board meeting, I believe. So I'm very happy about wrapping up that case. Some pending real estate matters. I worked with field trips actually, which was an interesting one about what the consents were and what needed to happen, and parents who at the very last minute wanted to send in emails allowing their kids to go or not go on the field trips. The answer to that was I did not recommend it, so I will just advise you of that. Employment matters, rezoning, custody, whistleblower. I did work on that process that came before you with the audit committee. Security footage issues, and also contracts. I also established first year goals. I will state that, and a lot of these you will see in my next 90 days because I, again, have not been here a year. These have largely been unmet, but these are what my goals are, and they are to implement a case management system. We're going to talk about that at the end of the presentation. Fiscal management is really important. I've started to look at what our costs are, what lawyers are representing us, what we're paying out, etc. And I'll go into that a little more in a little while. Today, establishing guidelines for outside counsel. In order to start establishing guidelines for outside counsel, I've had to take a deep dive into the outside counsels that we currently have, what our procedures are for that, and that's been interesting and different with each department. So that's been interesting. So for instance, ESE works with an outside counsel and they largely keep all of that information at ESE. Workers' comp has an outside counsel and they largely keep it with workers' comp. But there really is no centralized system yet to kind of keep everything together. So that's one of the things that I'm working on gathering and making sure that we're doing. Understanding the institutional needs and working on a legal program suited for this institution. Each institution is different. Each job is different. So I've been taking time to listen to what cabinet members and school principals and Dr. Shanoff and you all have had to say about what the needs are. I don't make those decisions. I interpret what you're telling me and then look at what the goals are. So that's really what I've tried to take on, is listening to all of you, because this is not my school district in any way, shape, or form. It's all of yours. So making sure that what I'm doing aligns with all of you and then building those relationships. So this is a small list of, this is a condensed list of the issues that I've addressed in the 5 months that I've been here. So I've worked with charter schools, anything from charter contracts to issues with discipline in charter schools, parents' Bill of Rights issues. So that's anything from parents wanting to discuss what their child, what education their child is going to receive, healthcare plans, things of that nature. I've gone over all of our general liability cases that are currently pending, and I'll discuss that in a following slide. Technology agreements was really important for us. There is a standard technology agreement that the district is now going to be implementing to make sure that all of our contracts with outside agencies, outside providers, are fulfilling all of the requirements of Florida statutes to make sure that our personally identifiable student information is kept private. I've also worked with employment and union matters, transportation. Workforce housing is one of the matters that I have researched for a board member and also for Dr. Shanoff. Campaigning issues and political activities by students and staff. This last Friday, I did send you all an email. I sent out a memo with Dr. Shanoff just advising all school employees about what the requirements are pursuant to statute and school board policy when it comes to political campaigning on campus. It's really important that all employees follow the law and also that everyone feels welcome to come to work every day and do the job that they need to do. So that was really important. I have sent you information on invocations. I could read this entire list for you. I don't think it's necessary as we go through, but it pretty much covers almost every single area within the school district.
One thing I do want to follow up a little bit later though, not
Sure.
now, is I know you mentioned evacuation shelters, and there was like a certain amount of like responsibility that was the county versus us.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, we don't have to talk about it right now because I know we're busy, but that's something that I would like to follow up with. What was the outcome of that? Because I know you work on things, but sometimes we don't always get the outcome.
We're still working on it. So I think that the most important thing to remember is that even though, yes, we are operating something in an emergency situation, I think it's important for us to also kind of protect our employees and ensure that our employees are being used to their highest and best, which is utilizing our facilities and maybe helping be more kind of caretakers of the facility and allow others who do have the emergency preparedness training to execute the actual plan itself. But these are things that we're still working through with the county to ensure that we have some fairness in who's responsible for what.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So if we look at the legal overview, the legal expenses year to date, so this would be since July of 2023, so we're not quite at July of 2024 yet. We have paid to outside counsel $330,124. I do want to state with that, as of next month, Mr. Kruppenbacher will be on a billing cycle, so he will not be getting paid monthly from the school district anymore. So any legal work he does he will have to submit bills like any other attorney that does outside work. We have paid $1,192,000 and change for property and casualty claims. There are 83 pending cases. And we have paid $1.3 million in workers' compensation. There are 17 pending cases. I do want to stress that those numbers are not just settlement numbers, but those numbers could also be to pay for attorney's fees for opposing counsel and other things as well. That would be included in a settlement, but that does not mean that this money went just directly to people that file claims against us. It could also go to pay for their medical bills and other things that are encompassed in a settlement. So it's just important to know that that number is not just given to someone to build a swimming pool.
When it comes to the outside counsel costs we've done since July, is that on par for just generally what we spend in a year here in
Yeah, let's see, do we have like a
Osceola?
year to
I
comparison?
do
like a
actually
benchmark, what
have
we've
a
spent?
comparison. Don't know if I have it, I do. I don't know if I have it with me in this, but I can send you out a year to date of what it's been over the past several years. It is on par with where we have been before. I am looking, however, to streamline that. So with this, as we go into the next section, but I can bring it up now, with case management software, what that's going to do is it's going to input every case into software. Also, then every email that you send for each case will have a code, and then the emails and all of the communication for each case will go into the software. All of our outside counsels, and I'm going to discuss in a little while about how I'm going to look into that, but they will also have a basic license where they will be expected to upload the work that they are doing on cases into the system as well, so that, for instance, if it's a property case, Mr. Sharma, for instance, would also have a license, and then he would be able to look at only the cases that affect him. So it's also a way for employees to work on their cases or provide information as well. So I'm going to give a little more information on that, but it's also going to allow us to compare costs and see, for instance, if one lawyer takes an hour to do something and another lawyer takes 3 hours to do something, where that lies. Also what lawyers charge for what, and how quickly they can settle the case. So there's lots of data that we can also pull from this software as well as we get it rolling over the next year.
Yeah, and I understand, so this is the first one, so I'm just kind of envisioning, like in the future, when we do year over year, like for instance, property claims paid is 1.1, let's say next year it's also 1.1, but it's like new cases. I like to kind of later on see, okay, out of that $1 million, 200,000 was bus driving accidents. You know, so they're not so much to hold you accountable, it's to find out like what's going on, because obviously you're not the one driving the bus or doing
Where
something
the
else.
risk really
Yeah.
is within the district. It's, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right, like what's causing the cost, what's causing.
Absolutely, and right now, one of the issues is there's an Excel spreadsheet over here, there's an Excel spreadsheet over here, there's an Excel spreadsheet over here, but they don't talk to each other. And for my organizational needs, but also for the district, it's really important that we can, look at all of that data. And it's a really important point, if we end up having, 7 people that hit their head on a beam at a certain school, then we might know, and that's absolutely nothing that's in a case right now, which is why I chose it. But we might know that beam is a little too low, or, if there's ways that we can use that data for a variety of things, which
Absolutely.
is really what I want to do. When we keep going right now, there are 15 outside counsel attorneys that are providing us legal services. They are providing us legal services in workers' comp, real estate, student discipline, ESE, human resources, truancy, and auto and general liability. One of the things with case management software, again, is to pull the data from that. I also would like, over time, to see what it's costing us to pay outside counsel to do those jobs versus what it might cost for us to have a staff attorney doing that instead. It may, over time, show that there's a cost saving to have someone in-house do some of those matters instead of hiring out different attorneys to do them. So that would be something to review and discuss in the future. That's not anything that I'm proposing to you all right now. I don't have that data. It would also help me when I have to, for instance, have an outside counsel because there's a conflict if I provide advice to the district and then provided advice for the school board. But again, that's all information that I'll be able to garner from that software. I've really taken the past 4 months to kind of just deep dive into addressing legal issues. So this summer is really going to be about looking at more the legal program as a whole, which is what I'm going to get into later.
I wonder if part of your analysis could also include what we're paying outside counsel versus their cost avoidance. So how much are we actually how much do they save us by doing whatever work that they have done for the district?
I am going to write that down and I'll add that in my notes when we keep going. The next part is school board policy, and thank you for that. That is definitely something I'm going to look at. So, and this is something that is happening across school districts, so I do just want to state that as I bring this up. I've gone through the policies with the help of John Boyd, who I really appreciate getting me a full and complete list. There are 304 total rules that have been created since 2005. 60 of them have never been looked at or revised in any way. Maybe they've been looked at, but they haven't been revised. I really do believe that of those 60 policies, they all need to come in front of the school board again, whether it is to say no changes are needed or to update statute. I do think that if the policy is 21 years old, that it probably does need to come in front of the school board again. So at the end of this presentation, I'm going to try to get more information from you all on how you would like that to happen. I have grouped those policies into the following categories. So it will be safety and security, student progression and achievement, employee rights and responsibilities, school board governance, training and responsibilities, transportation and vehicle maintenance, matters relating to the public, finance, donations and payroll, and property and land use. So when I say I'm going to give you a task at the end, that's going to be to ask the 4 of you here today to discuss and provide me a priority of how you would like me to work with Mr. Boyd and anyone else in this room that needs to work on these policies to update them and review them. Okay. So the next 90 days. As we've discussed, case management software in general, the next is to draft guidelines for outside counsel. And again, each institution is different. So I did work on drafting those guidelines in my former position, but those guidelines do not fit for Osceola County. So I really needed to find out exactly what outside counsel was doing, how they were operating, how they were sharing information before I could even consider that. I would like to secure actual contracts for all of our outside counsel. I would like to have a specific contract, possibly with 2 or 3 lawyers or law firms for each area so that depending on the matter, there is a decision. So for instance, if it is general liability, but it's a slip and fall, you might want to use attorney A versus if it's a bus accident, you might know that you want to use attorney B. But either way, those attorneys would be under either a 2 or a 3-year contract where they would get paid X dollars with the billing requirements and the attention requirements that come to it so that the district and the school board can make sure that the lawyers that are providing legal advice are doing so in a costly and timely manner. Again, all of those decisions still, though, when you review cases would be reviewed with me, and anything over the threshold I would obviously and always bring to all of you. But we would look at fees and billing requirements, expectations, and reporting requirements, which are very important. Also, if there's ever an issue where the school board needed to update a policy because of something they knew in their unique area, they would need to provide that to us as well. I also want to work on contract templates, and I have met with purchasing already. One of those templates has already been provided, and again, that was that technology agreement that I referred to before. This morning, for instance, with House Bill 7063, which is human trafficking, all of our contracts starting January 1st, the organization or company needs to sign a document certifying that they are not trafficking anyone in their company. So I sent the affidavit this morning to purchasing, or a draft affidavit that they could choose to use. And I'm also recommending that that is in our initial bid packet. So yes, so for instance, if we contract with Apple to provide services, Apple would have to certify that they are not human trafficking. Or if we certify with Wendy's or CC's or John's Painters or whoever we certify them.
To what
I don't know.
degree?
So the
So
statute.
for example, contract with Apple, does that mean that they can't traffic in China either?
I would have to look at the statute. I looked at it last night, and I put a draft affidavit together this morning based on the statutory language that is in there. I apologize, I'm not 100% familiar with it because I reviewed it last night and I wanted to make sure that affidavit got out, but I can get you that information if you'd like. The language that I put in the affidavit was the direct actual certification that is required under the statute. There is a paragraph in this, the Florida statute, it's also in the bill obviously, that says exactly what they need to certify to. And it does need to be an affirmative oath. So it either needs to be the swear or affirm language that doesn't need to be notarized, or the notarized language, either one, but they do have to certify that under oath or through the language. I also want to make sure that all of our other contracts, that there is some sort of matrix where it says, for instance, we always need to have the public records clause, we always need to have force majeure, we always need to have jurisdiction in there, and just make sure that we have a document that says for every single contract, if this, then this, if this, then that. And then for when it comes in front of the board for all of you, having a purchasing matrix is something that I've discussed as well, where there's something more specific when people are ranking in our bids and things of why they give them a 1 or why they give them a 5. Kind of, for instance, when you grade a FAST test or when you grade a science test. So, you know, if they're 20% off of what you thought they would be or 50% off what they thought they would be, just so that the contracts and all of the requirements are clear and they are less left to, you know, opinion and more based in fact.
Now, what happens when, because I noticed that some of the smaller companies may not have their own contract, but some of the bigger companies have their own contract. So we have our contract template, but in order to work with Dell, they have their own contract template. So which contract template wins? You know what I mean? Or do we try to have a hybrid of them?
We do, so
or
a
we
lot-
just give in to Dell because they're the big monster? You know?
Not at all. So what we often do is, you know, we try to have those companies use our contract, but if they don't, I will go through and I will redline their contract and I will say either this is against Florida law or not, and then I'll take the other contracts side by side, and Giselle's also a very big help with that. And we'll say, okay, you're missing this needs to go in, you're missing this needs to go in, you're missing this needs to go in. And hopefully, you know, there's a gray area where you can meet in the middle, and sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. There are also certain clauses, for instance, like indemnification, that are a non-starter, because if they are not going to agree to statutory language that's required in Florida, then it's a non-starter. And that is an issue, for instance, with some of the big companies right now. So it's something that's happening across the state. It's also why, for instance, it took so long for me to find case management software. It's, for instance, when we have contracts with outside entities and we need to put in there that if you do training of our students, we're gonna make sure that you comply with Florida law, because we need to make sure, even if their training program focuses on A, B, C, and D, if you can't focus on D because of Florida law, then they need to follow Florida law.
Yeah, one thing I was going to add to your point, Mr. Melendez, asking about companies like Dell. Apple would be the exception because Apple typically doesn't work with resellers, but typically the larger companies will actually work through a reseller, and a reseller will actually be the one that is much more amenable to utilizing our contract templates. So then we're not necessarily beholden to the giants out there. Apple doesn't really provide a bulk discount through a reseller. There doesn't seem to be any benefit to that. So typically those contracts do come through Apple directly. In some cases they may come through UDP, but usually it's Apple.
And a large majority of the educational-based programs now, because they are used so widely throughout the state of Florida, there are contracts, and almost every single school district is using a similar technology agreement. It might be in a different order, but it's all in there. So there are contracts that are coming to us. If I go through them and I say, okay, you got it here, you got it here, you got it here, you got it here, 99% of the time, it's almost all in there at this point. It's just looking for those little words that they might try to stick in, like only related to third parties or only related to 2 years, where we need to make sure that it's absolutely correct. So that's just something to look at. Some of the other issues that I have identified that I've been working with the various school district departments on, of things that we need to work, that I have pointed out that I believe need to be addressed, are just, following up on our healthcare. That's something I really need to, learn and make sure that we are aware of. The truancy process, I have met with the former truancy judge in Orange County, and he's going to introduce me to the truancy judge in Osceola County to make sure that that process is going well. I have started issuing monthly legal memos through the building connections. So I've done one on surveillance video, I've done one on political campaigning. Next month I'm going to do one on the release of information. So for instance, if a police officer comes on campus, what kind of information can you give them? If a guardian ad litem comes on campus, what kind of information can you give them? When is it an emergency that you can give them information? What if someone asks to see a kid? So just making sure that some of those more general issues that happen in schools on a day-to-day basis have a legal memo there, so that the principals and the staff can say, oh, wait a second, I might not know that answer, but I know I have a memo and I'm going to pull it out really quick, so that then they can look at that and they don't have to keep calling, Giselle and myself to say, hey, we have X here and they want Y. Instead, it'll be in that information. Also looking at charter contract procedures, although Dr. Penaloza, ever since we have started talking, there were some questions that she had, and they have really tightened that up, so that's incredible. The FERPA hearing process is something that's not fully established in writing here, so I want to make sure that there is a formal process when a parent does want to contest something that's in their child's record. Title IX just had new regulations come out. I had emailed all of you. At this point, it's probably going to be in a holding pattern for the fall, but making sure that the district stays on top of that, and that if there are any changes, the procedures are updated. Settlement reviews is something that I'm already working on, in having better communication with our outside counsel and more regular communication with our outside counsel. So if they are working on a case, instead of waiting 3 months to come to us and say, hey, I want to address this, if it's very important, knowing that they can come to me earlier to discuss those settlements and those concerns. Public records requests is also one that I want to make sure there are more established policies and procedures regarding the exemptions so that it's clear when something is exempt from public disclosure and when something is not exempt, so that there is no gray area, and that there's always going to be gray area, but giving our personnel a better framework to answer those questions. DCF reporting is also one that I want to just make sure. I think everything's going well with that, but I always like to look at that every year to make sure that those procedures are in place. And then, as again, establishing our protocols for third-party administrators and risk management. I've been working with, it was John's Eastern, now it's Davies, and we've been working on better communication and how we are working on those cases. So that's really where it is. I'm trying to be mindful of time. It's been a pleasure and an honor to serve in this role for the past 5 months. I do want to say that everyone in this room has been incredible to work with, and I really do appreciate it. The departments that I've worked at where I've had to say, oh, I really think you need to look at that, or, have really wanted to do the right thing. And I'm consistently just so incredibly pleased that everyone that I've worked with wants to do the right thing and wants to make the correct changes and does want to do what's right for kids. And it makes my job a lot easier. Certainly Giselle makes my job a lot easier. She's an incredible help, and I really do appreciate her all the time. Yes, I did have to throw that in there, but not because I had to, but because I want to. She's incredible. And with that, my self-evaluation is due to you all tomorrow, so I will be sending that to you for review in June. And then with that, really what we need to do besides your questions is go back to that policy page. And I either request that we engage in, or you all engage in a discussion now on what you want those rankings to be. Or if you would like to send me your individual rankings over the next week at the next school board meeting, I can tally them up and organize them and read them back to you as well, whatever you decide you would like to do.
One thing I would like a little follow-up on, because we've had some history in the past, regards to truancy.
Yes.
Because when you're done with that, because I remember, I can't even remember my years anymore. At one point, we were disappointed with some kind of software or phone system that was going out there and following up with people, and so, in other words, I kind of like want an evaluation of the whole thing, you know what I mean? And so it's like, I think we were at one point even saying the statute says X, like so many days, or an absence considered like a half a day, but we can create our own standards and say, man, if you miss more than 3 periods, then you're considered absent or something like that. Or let's write our own warning letter first. But then I'm hearing warning letters may go out, but then parent contact information isn't up to date or something like that, or they move. You know what I mean? Just, at some point, just kind of like a workshop on just truancy alone.
So,
Dr. Shanoff and I have discussed that already. I handled all of the truancy cases in Orange County, so we
agree. When we look at attendance, attendance, across the country is significantly down and has not recovered to pre-COVID levels. You're right, Mr. Melendez. There's some disjointedness when it comes to the truancy process. We probably need to kind of start, I hate to say, we probably need to start over and start from scratch regarding a strategy to address truancy. The state attorney's office had suspended a lot of the truancy related services, specifically around child study team and investigators from the state attorney's office actually coming to meetings, sitting across from parents and basically saying, if you don't send your child to school, we're going to go to court. And that really solved a lot of issues. It straightened out a lot of concerns that were occurring. The state attorney now seems to be very focused on bringing truancy back into light and making sure that the supports are there for schools. But I believe we're probably in a very good place with our reorganization in student services to specifically attack the issues around truancy, because we'll have the alignment correct and the resources behind it to go ahead and really attack it in a way that we can create a good policy around.
Yeah, because that's so important, because if a student's not in school, you can't teach them. You can't achieve all the other goals that we want, so.
No, and when you look at our students that are at risk for not graduating, the one consistent thing across the board is consistent attendance. They're not coming to school. Now, part of that is having to do some root cause analysis as to why they're not coming to school. For some students, not coming to school may mean many different things. It may mean I have to work, otherwise we cannot afford to live where we live, or whatever it happens to be. So I have to make money for my family. Or it's I'm just not coming, or I may not be in the right headspace to be in and around other people. There's lots of different reasons. We really need to do the root cause analysis as to why students are not coming. And that should be part of the truancy process, should be part of the child study team process. We should be asking these questions and getting the data on it. The same way that you would like some additional visibility into risk and where those things are, we should have additional visibility into what are the root causes around why truancy exists at the rate it does within our district. And just because it's a nationwide issue doesn't mean that we shouldn't do something about it. We should do something about it. So I think we will with the way that we've restructured.
And one of the things, again, this would be at the board's discretion, that I did work on in my prior position, was working with the truancy liaison to discuss what the courts really wanted, because it's not always just from the courts, as Dr. Shanoff said. They've been absent 5 days in a 30-day period, but the judges really started wanting to know why, and also what the school district had done to try to address the why before we got here, so that they could then order the correct measures. In some circumstances, it was counseling. In some circumstances, it was, the parent would come in and say, oh, well, my kid's too sick to go to school, but we already knew when we got there that the family had never applied for hospital homebound, but we had an application ready because they had told the social worker, that the child was sick, and we were able to say, well, the social workers offered this application 3 times and they haven't done it, Your Honor, but we do have it here today. So working together in tandem between the legal team from the district and the student services team was really important in trying to figure out what to do for those students. It's also working with the judiciary, though, to have some of the same resources in Osceola that are in other places. For instance, right now there is no youth shelter here. So in other jurisdictions, if a student wasn't going to school, the judge in some cases assigned the child to the shelter for 30 days where they had to go to school. That was usually not at the beginning. It was you're going to go to school, and if you don't, you're going to come back. You're going to go to school, and if you don't, you're going to come back. Okay, well, if you don't go to school, you're going to do the next 15 days over there. It's a scare tactic, but also in some cases, when the students then stayed at the shelter and had 15 days of consistent schooling, they started to get back on track. So or they got the right medication, or they got the right supports or counseling, or connected to the right services. So that's all something that the legal side would work with student services to make sure that when student services goes into court, that they have everything anticipated that the judges would want to help these kids.
What's the percentage increase in truancy?
We're pulling that right now. Actually, our attendance rates, I believe, are better this year than they were last year. But we're hovering around what, 8%?
Yeah, just slightly better than last year.
Yeah, so 8% would be our we're at 91.5% attendance as average daily attendance. I would say that a little less than half of the 8% would be considered chronically truant.
Like 3 to 4% of the
3 to
district is
4%,
truant?
yes.
Those are like 60,000 students, so like 3%. almost 1,200, right?
And I will say, just in my experience, truancy court is helpful for some kids, but there are some families where circumstances are just really hard. So it kind of gave a visual of what else you could connect them to. And that's outside of my role now, but something that I could, just provide that information to student services based on my background so that, they can have that information moving forward.
Thank you.
I would like to know from the school board members if you would like to rank these policy categories now, or if you would all like to send me a list, and at the next school board meeting, I can review your responses and get to me from there.
I think it's, for me, it would be better if can you send the Excel spreadsheet so we can sort it, or I can sort it?
Yes, it is on Board Docs, and I will send it this evening as well.
If it's on Board Docs, I can get it from there.
Well, Board Docs is down right now, so we'll email it to you.
Just kidding.
Well, can you give us an estimation or an assessment of what the need is for each one of these?
Yeah, because you guys I'd like to see staff's, idea too, like what their opinion is.
It will take a few days if you wanted specifics. What I can state is anything that has had a requirement for an update based on statute has been updated because of the system that the school district uses and the work that Mr. Boyd does. So if the statutes come in and something's required a change, or if a policy has required an update, or if Dr. Shanoff's team has identified something, those have already been done. A lot of these are going to be things that are just sitting there.
And so, you're talking about these right here,
Yes.
the separate sheet. And what is the yellow, just to understand what
Means
the
that
difference
The ones that we need to
Those are the
update.
ones that are
Those are
old
the ones
enough,
that
Because some of them say original but are not.
So all of the ones that
Because there's
have
obviously
had
new
no
ones, new.
revisions. The highlighted ones have had zero
have
revisions.
had zero.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So the other ones are original but then
2005.
have had a revision.
That is
since
correct. So for instance, if you look at number 10, which is policy
Gotcha,
2.25, the last time it was, the original adoption date was 2004, but it has been revised 5 times since then.
So to be clear with the directions, the ones highlighted in yellow, pre-2005 are the ones you need us to rank. Is that correct?
Yes, I have taken these policies though, and I have grouped them into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 categories.
Yeah, I'll take the opportunity to just kind of go back and kind of reread them then, so,
Sure.
and kind of give you my suggestion. Because now that's really clear, now I know how to find it, and this is really, somebody took the time to make this good Excel spreadsheet. You know?
It was a team effort.
Yeah, I'll take the time to actually, follow through and actually, because it's really laid out really simply for me to understand, so.
So can I just make a,
Sure, I was just gonna, yeah, you can go first,
sorry,
sure.
I don't,
yeah.
I mean, it's your presentation, you.
No, I was gonna say, I had just grouped them kind of into these 7 categories for ease, but if there are certain ones that stand out to you, then certainly I would work immediately with Mr. Boyd based on what you all identify as something that needs to happen right away.
So we should read this. We should basically read our rules. So when would you like us to read these rules by so that we have some kind of appropriate time?
If you are all actually going and I say if you're just going to do it based on these categories next week, but if you want to take the time to read them, then I defer to you all as to what you would like me to do.
To be clear, these all need to be updated. There's no question that they need to be updated. What you're asking, yes, because they're
Yeah, but she said just because it's old doesn't mean we
Some
look
of
at it,
them might
doesn't
not
have to
need
change
to
it.
be updated. We may go through them and say, everything statutorily is fine. It may be a statutory citation change, or it may just be a language change. For instance, in my past position, there were a few where, for instance, there was one about accreditation that just didn't apply anymore, and it was just sitting there. So those are some
What
of
you're
them as
asking
well.
us to do is to decide which ones would come first,
That
not
is correct.
whether or not they're coming. They
That
have
is
to.
correct. I would like for them
Okay.
all over the next year to come to you all. I'd like to take them in bulk, apart from Mr. Boyd's rulemaking cycles, to say, okay, these are the 2005 policies, and we're gonna do 10 of them today, or we're gonna do 15 of them today and update them. So
So just so we're 100% clear, there are some that may just require statutory
That is
updates,
correct.
and they should not necessarily be picking and choosing based on statute because they may not be as knowledgeable in the statute as you. They're looking for the ones that are most germane to what the district is doing now and what is priority for them.
That is
right now.
correct.
Okay.
And then
So-
one
In order to do
after
this
you,
justice, we have to read the policies. That's so, there's no,
That
before
is-
next, anything next, we should read it.
That's true.
that's true. It's, I had thought about it's very, very hard for me to go through all 60 of them and say, okay, these just need statutory updates or these just need this, because once you get to a policy, whether you find out at the end of that review, it just needs a statutory update or a change in, a little bit of language or not, it is a process to make sure you're doing it correctly. So it's asking guidance of which ones you want me to do first, not if they will get done, because they will all get done.
So.
Do you wanna break it down by like section? To say, okay, cause
Yeah.
section 2, section 4, I mean, whatever order they are,
30
rather than
days.
like
I mean,
an
can
Sure.
can everybody read it in 30 days?
She broke them down by
It's
categories.
not War and Peace.
So if you
30
could,
Depends on the section.
Well, I mean, the entire thing is only 200 and, how many pages, 246 pages?
Something like that, it's almost.
Yeah, so
It's half of War and Peace.
it's a big binder when I carry it around,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna
but
lie.
in terms of
Yes.
pages, and they're very short pages. So
Some of them
it can be
are.
read within 30 days. I mean, for
30
sure.
days is fine.
I think that's,
That would be great.
okay. May I just, I'm just gonna point something out, just because it's a good example for it. So I'm looking at 6.911. If you recall, board members, I brought an item to you for emergency consideration regarding sick leave. It was 6.911. Sick leave bank.
Mhm.
So if you recall, several months ago, I actually brought a situation in front of the board where I was asking for an emergency authorization to bypass the policy. And this is a perfect example where you go back and you see, oh my gosh, the policy has not been revised ever. But it did come in front of the board to actually have to go through an emergency authorization.
Twice, even before you.
So then, that might be something that you say, you know what, we have actually seen this come before us.
Mhm.
And this is actually germane and pertinent to our employees now. So this may be something that we want to take up for action right away.
And 3 times, actually, since I've been here 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, I mean, it's a very timely issue. It certainly is very timely, I know, for Mr. Boyd and a lot of the conversations that he's had. And, sometimes you just, common sense has kind of changed over time. And what makes sense now maybe didn't make sense at the time the policy was created.
Right.
So that's just something that you may want to consider. What has come in front of the board time after time after time that requires consideration.
And what I would like to do with your agreement is, and this is not a vote that would have to happen with the school board, this is just a discussion, to do these in a rulemaking cycle separate and apart from the rules that Mr. Boyd is working on for statutory issues and things of that nature. So, for instance, he might say, okay, we're gonna have a new rulemaking cycle to do, the workshop at the school board meeting, but it would just be for the 2005 policies, so that
Don't get confused.
that's correct. I'd like to keep the policies that need to be revised because of statute, or district immediate need separate from the 2005 policies, which also may reflect a district need, but
And to that end, to be honest with you, I think we should be doing that all the time regardless. Let's say this review is done, right? And every year, there's statutory requirements, but then sometimes staff says things happen, like artificial intelligence. We kind of wanted to get ahead of that before it was required to have a policy. So I would like to have them separated to say, okay, this is the time of year for statutory requirements because the legislature always meets at it and kind of convenes a month or so apart. We should always have, after that. And then the other time of year, these are like the discretionary rules. the rules where it's not mandated by the state, it's just staff realizing that something isn't working, or the board can have an idea that something isn't working, we want to modify those.
So what my hope was, Mr. Melendez, which I think would help, is that after we get through policies that are from 2005, I would like to get to a point where there is never a policy that's more than 10 years old. So that every 10 years a policy is reviewed regardless of need. But for right now, in the interest of volume, I picked 21 years. So it was just a number that I chose, and then, after we get all of those done, I will then come back to you and say, okay, these are the ones that are now more than 15 years old. And then these are, so that
Kind of like a filter.
we can filter them down, and then at some point, there won't be any policies that are older than 10 years old.
I got
And
you,
it would
because at that
be-
point, everything will be up to date, and whenever changes we do are really in real time, so to speak.
Yearly, there would be, hey, we have these policies that need to be updated, or these policies that need to be updated. So you could do a chunk every year to make sure that they are still current.
Anecdotally, I just want to share that Sarah's been really, really easy to work with. When I have needed Sarah, I have been able to get Sarah. And Sarah has called me on numerous occasions. I wish I was more available to Sarah as she has been for me. I need to be closer to my phone. But I just want to say that it's really been great to see Sarah jump in as much as she has to get to this point. Yes, I had worked with Sarah in the past, and in a much more kind of transactional capacity. She being a staff attorney, me being a school principal, and
Now look at you both. What an elevation, I love it.
but no, I mean the point of
Yeah,
me
have
saying
that
that.
conversation a couple of weeks ago.
The point that I'm trying to make though is that I've been able to appreciate Sarah in a new light, and I think that a lot of times you try to figure out whether or not somebody is absolutely made for the moment, and she has been phenomenal to work with, and I think I speak for the entire cabinet when I say that. She's been great, and we're grateful that she's here.
Thank you for that.
It's worth my commute every day, very much so.
You don't
You
have
don't
to
run
live in
into
Baldwin
Osceola
Park. You don't have to live there.
Listen,
I
I
can't
will
live
not
more
be
than
living in
50
Baldwin
miles
Park
away
for
from
much
there,
longer.
We can calculate northern Osceola.
My daughter might have my head, so it's worth it.
School choice is a thing. She can stay where she is.
That is true. Are there any, certainly my phone is always open. If there's something to address today, please let me know. But otherwise, you can always call me. I'm available. And
I'm this many more days until I'm an Osceola County resident.
Ooh, a week?
Many
Nice.
more days.
Amazing. Are you excited?
I am.
Is that a secret?
St. Cloud.
I know where you
There,
are. Well,
Sunbridge. So.
for the record, just because we are,
Safety,
she does not
security,
live in
and
Baldwin Park.
I do not
I just
live in
wanna
Baldwin
make
Park
sure.
for anyone
Yeah.
This
I will
meeting is
not-
now yours.
My address is secure and exempt
Yeah,
because I was a
I
item, so
When I say
it's okay.
Sunbridge,